On this week's episode, we talk about being child-free with Alison Leiby. Welcome to the Ask a Matchmaker podcast. I'm your host, Matchmaker Maria, and on this week's episode, we have comedian and writer Alison Leiby. Alison, welcome to the Ask a Matchmaker podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I'm already loving this soft pink lighting.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is great. I'm so thrilled.
I'm thrilled because I'm having a fangirl moment. I love Alison. I have loved Alison ever since I went to, oh God, another show about abortion. But that came out 2 years ago. Is it 2 years?
It was summer of 2022. So
it was at Cherry Hill Theater.
Yeah.
I went to see a day before Anna Wintour did, which means I have
Yes.
influenced Anna Wintour.
Yes, absolutely.
That was me.
Yeah.
Like
you did
I
it.
put it up and I was like, oh my God, here we are, Alison, la la la. And then the next day, Anna Wintour's like, I must see what Maria and George, my husband, was a big fan too. He's like, I need to see this show about abortion. Yeah. So let's talk about it. So the things that I think about when I think about you is that, one, you're a brilliant writer. I mean, you've written on The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and a few comedy specials.
Yeah, a couple different comedy specials, a couple different political comedy shows that are long gone because good.
Yeah.
We don't need more.
How long will that good last?
I know. Hopefully long enough.
We need predictions before the end of this episode. But also you are very public about not only having had an abortion, which is healthcare. She's public about receiving healthcare.
Yes.
And also about being child-free.
Yes.
So
which I'm always excited to talk about.
I would love to talk to you about being child-free because I'm not child-free.
Yeah.
I understand when people want to be child-free.
Totally.
I have questions about when there's ambiguity, and maybe those aren't, when you might not have the answers to those, and you don't speak for every child-free person.
No, but I certainly have had my own journey with it.
Absolutely. And I want to hear about that journey.
Yeah.
But let's take it way back for a second. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're an only child?
I am an only child.
Okay. So no grandkids from mom and dad.
Yeah, that's been kind of the biggest thing as I they're very understanding of where I'm at with it. And even I wouldn't say that my mother always was on board, but even recently we were reading a catastrophic climate news story and she was like, I don't know, Alison, maybe you're right. Maybe there is no hope for this planet and let's just wrap it up. And I was like, well, that's not quite why I feel this way, but it certainly helps.
These intrusive thoughts, though, I've been having them a lot lately.
It's impossible not to. The way that we consume the world around us is just oh no.
But it's something even just kind of a macro level. I watched this video on TikTok about how the earth will something in 100,000 years.
Right.
And I was thinking about okay, I don't matter in 100,000 years, right?
Right.
And neither do my kids.
No, not even close.
But I try to visualize what life will be 1,000 years from now.
Yes.
And I'm kind of
even 100 years from now, I'm kind of what's that?
Yeah.
Who knows? We don't know.
I'm trying. We went to go see a house this weekend, and it's
nice.
in. I live in a town that's very old, and the town that we're looking at is also very old. And when I say old, I'm not talking about ancient Greece old.
No, America old.
America old, which is 200 years.
Yeah.
Woohoo! You know, and George Washington stood at this very street to say the British are coming, whatever it was. I mean, that's actually not that far off.
Right. No, I mean, if you're on the East Coast looking at coastal towns, they all do have I grew up in Annapolis, Maryland, and
there you go.
Maryland has all this colonial history, and it's just this very strange I'm out at the bars hanging out with my friends, but it's 5 feet away there's where Francis Scott Key was born, and you're I guess
Sure.
I mean, it happened,
and that was only 230 years ago,
not that long,
or 250 years ago, and I think something like that, 1977, 2020. Yeah, you know what? No, we're not.
Well, they say
far.
that
hold on a second. In 3 years, it's 250 years.
Yeah, because I guess there's some statistic that now I'm not being able to think of the word, but not monarchies, not democracy, but just cultures kind of go 246 years before they crumble. A lot of them that's
empires?
When you trace empires. That's what it is. That's the word I couldn't think of. So
I mean, we're due,
and I think we're right at traditionally where that happens, and I'm I see it.
Yeah. No, we're due. I think
so.
I mean, look at the British monarchy.
Exactly. I mean, what a mess.
I don't even know when this episode's coming out right now.
God knows what we'll know by then.
I just want to say right now, we are recording this on March 18th.
Yes.
Okay. who knows? I will see you in the comments of this YouTube video.
It'll
so we
be
can
crazy.
laugh at what the hell is happening.
What the hell is happening? Where is Kate Middleton? They said
Do you think she'll be found by the time this episode comes out? This episode might not come out for like another month.
I mean, I think
Did they say
the royal family has been teasing like she'll return on Easter.
Yeah, but which Easter? Greek Easter, which is May 5th?
I feel like they observe. I think they're talking about like the other Easter.
I don't know. Prince Philip.
Don't do a lot of Easter, but
her grandfather-in-law was born Greek Orthodox. These people.
Never know.
You never know.
Never know. But I'll be shocked if we see her by then. I hope she's okay.
I hope she's okay. I hope she's okay. All right. So anyway, so you were, what the hell were we talking about? Oh yeah. So empires. So I think about the oldness of this, right? And I think about like, okay, 250 years ago, this happened. And then I think to myself, like in 250 years.
Right.
And it really kind of, the only reason I'm having these intrusive thoughts is because I'm on a home buying journey. And I'm like, who is this house? Like, okay, after us, who else gets it?
Right. It kind of contextualizes existence in a different way.
Oh,
and you're just like, oh, right.
Like my great-great-grandkids, are they going to be annihilated by like a nuclear winter?
Right.
Like,
we don't know. I hope not.
I think it'll end up being a volcano out of Iceland.
Yes.
She's done it before.
Yeah.
She's due for another one.
And there was a lot of rumbling, literal rumbling, I think this summer where they were like, oh, I think it's going to go. But
was it this summer? I think it would just happen around Christmas.
Or maybe it was Christmas. It was recent. What year? Oh, I guess it's March now. It felt like recent. And I was just like, oh no. But like no one was talking about it. And it was just like, I would see it on TikTok and I'm like.
Yeah, same, TikTok.
And I'm like, is this a niche thing or should we all be worried about this?
And then you think about the artwork that came out in Europe during like the Dark Ages and you're like, it was dark. Because of volcanoes.
Yes.
And there is that super volcano that erupted in Toga 2 years ago.
Yes.
Because of the vapors going into the stratosphere, it's completely affected Earth.
Great.
So, wow, we are blowing through a lot of diverse topics right now.
Yes, we are all over the map.
Let's go back.
Great.
You were born in Maryland.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and an only child. And my child-free choices like affect my parents more than I think.
Do you think there's a mourning period?
For them?
Yeah.
I think that they definitely, like, it took them a couple of years from when I first kind of was like, I'm probably not going to have kids.
When did you know you were not going to have kids?
It really, like, as I've been, like, rewriting my show about abortion, it, like, I've kind of structured it around the idea that, like, I always thought I probably wouldn't because it just never felt like a thing in my brain where I was like, I have to make sure that I plan around having kids. I have to make sure, like, it just has never, it's been this, like, it just was never part of my brain. But because of the way our culture functions, I just assumed, like, oh, I guess I might, because like everyone does, like just assumed like, oh, it'll just kind of happen. And it's like, I think there are a lot of people for whom it does just kind of happen. But I think there's a lot of people like me who are like, oh, I've been actively building a life that will make it impossible for it to just kind of happen. Like I've been choosing things that make it more difficult, I think. And just like the way I live my life feel like, I'm like, I work a lot at night. I do it like, just even for like regular dating and getting married and those things, I think like it's just a slight roadblock.
It's not as accommodating for other people, the life that you've chosen to have.
Yeah, and like
the life that you're happy with.
Yeah, I love what I do, and I want to keep performing, and I want to keep being like, now I'm in LA, now I'm in New York, now I'm in LA. Like I like the career life I've built for myself that I'm like, oh, I can't imagine how a family fits into that, but I really like this, so I'm really happy. But it wasn't until after I had my abortion that I was fine. I was like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, certainly that wasn't going to be a kid I was going to have from a relationship I was going to be in or anything like that. But I was just like, wow, even just like the idea of possible motherhood, like made me so unhappy. I was just like, there is just no, I think that this proved to me like what my real feelings on motherhood are, not from that specific event, but like kind of bigger picture. And so then it was like, really, it's been like the last like 5 years that I've been like, oh, I really am not going to have kids. And like, I really mean it. And it took my parents like a couple of years to like wrap their heads around it. And I think I was kind of telling them at a time when a lot of my their friends' kids were having kids. So like they were kind of in the middle of the like, oh, look at all these baby pictures. And like, I think my mom wants to be a grandmother. Like, I think she would like, I don't think she would ever like me to call her that. But like, I think that like ultimately she wants to have that. And I feel bad, but we get to have all these other cool things being like closer because I don't have something that is in between, not in between, but
it's a different identity for them.
Yeah, right.
And I see this, like, one of my girlfriends right now, she's pregnant, and my husband and I were actually good friends with her parents.
Oh, wow.
And because we're all different ages. So she's younger than me. And, but she's pregnant. She's about to have her first baby in probably a week. And we're very close with her parents. And I was telling her, I was like, this is your parents' first kid. Your parents might say they're not going to change, but it's their first grandkid. They're about to have an insane identity shift.
Of course.
And some people do really well with that identity shift. Mm-hmm. I think they're going to be rock stars.
Yeah.
And I think some other people might be emotionally immature and can't handle that identity.
Yeah.
Like,
I think that's true.
And then they can make the, relationships, the relationship dynamics of any couple really hard when you have that sort of immaturity, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I also get to have this like special, like my parents and I go away every year. We go to Aruba for a week and just like sit next to each other reading books all day.
Yeah,
and
you would not do that with kids.
And it's like, there's never a world where that would be part of our lives. And like my parents are they're not like older but like my parents are in their mid 70s. My parents are a little on the older side of like a lot of my friends' parents. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, I'm so glad we get this time while they're both still super healthy and we're running around to Aruba and we're getting drunk at dinner and talking about the books we're reading and everybody's there. Like,
you have a friend in them.
Exactly. In a way that like, I kind of explained to my mom, like, if I had a kid, like, this is different. Maybe not. Maybe not worse. Could be good. Could be better. Who knows? But like it would be different.
It would be different.
We all really like what we have going on, and so it took a long time, but I think they're understanding.
Do they live near you?
They're in Maryland still, so they're like 3 hours on Amtrak.
Okay,
which is like not. They're not so like I've gone home for like emergent. My mom, my dad had heart surgery, and she was like, "Can you just get down here?" And I was like, "I'm there in a second." And like, it's very easy for me to bounce back and forth. They come up for like the night sometimes, and I'll just come and we'll like hang out. So like it's not so far that it's like I'm not getting on a plane.
When you said that you always, you weren't structuring your life to accommodate someone who might want kids, and maybe you have kids and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Do you feel like when I hear from women who are saying stuff like, I'm a maybe on kids, I will admit to you that especially if it's like after a certain age, like if it's after the age of, let's say 38, and the number is arbitrary right now.
Of course.
I'm just using it
totally.
as a placeholder.
I know what you mean.
But sometimes I'll meet women who are like 38 and over, and they're like, well, I'm still a maybe on kids. And I'm like, I always ask, are you a maybe on kids? Like, if I found the right guy, I'd have his kids? Or are you unsure about that life? And almost always it's the second one, which is like, it's like, well, I don't even have a plant in my house. How could I keep a baby alive? And I'm like, a baby's not a fern.
Yeah, I think it's always not detrimental, but like when people are like, ugh, I can't even keep a plant alive. I'm like,
self-deprecation
it's not the same. And like,
it's not welcome for me. It's like, what do you mean? Like a puppy, a goldfish is not the same as a baby.
As like even having a pet is not the same. Like some people are like, well, I'll get a dog and see if that works. I'm like,
a dog is not the same.
It's not the same thing. And like, I think like what women, like what I've learned and I hope other people have is like being real eyes open on what motherhood would look like. And then that way you can like understand, like, is that something? I think there are lots of women who are unsure and like we don't talk about regret or the hard parts of motherhood.
And I've seen the regret.
And like that's real. And I think that like more often than not I think that comes from lots of different situations. But I think that for some people that comes from not really like having the full picture of what motherhood would look like for your life forever. Because we don't show that in our culture as much as I wish, the realities and like how really hard it is to, I mean, I think people know
you also have to get really lucky.
Yeah.
Like I feel lucky, but I have friends who, I'm not gonna say they're unlucky, but their children might have challenges and obstacles.
Yeah.
And that is going to be a very different career trajectory, relationship trajectory, the one that you have with your partner,
where you're living,
everything changes when you add in another human, a new human into the mix.
Yes.
And it's very different than an animal. Like as someone who does have a dog, My dog has had the exact same life for the last 16 years. Nothing has changed for him.
There's no development.
Food.
There's no,
He has 2 walks a day. Someone cleans up his poop. He's got a nice life, but it's the same life every day, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes there's new people in the life. Like I had kids. He plays with those kids.
Mm-hmm.
But he knows his life, you know?
Yeah. It's very small. And
a kid changes every week in the beginning. And then it's every month. And it's like you have other people that are like, your kid needs to do its homework. And you're being, no one's telling about your pet. Like, right. Your dog didn't bark correctly.
Right.
It's like, okay.
Yeah, there's so many variables. And like, I remember when I have a cat, and when I got my cat, my mom was like, does it make you feel like maybe you were rash, like, just because I'm like, oh my God, I love him so, and I do love my cat so much. It's like we're very connected.
Listen, I believe it.
I love
my dog.
Of course. Like the way you love a pet is such a specific, unique love that's so great. And I'm so glad I have it. But like
it's a story love. In Greek, we have a word for it.
Oh.
The love a parent has for a child is also the same for a pet. It's story love. It's I am gonna cherish your soul for the rest of as long as I'm living. I'm gonna cherish your soul in my life, right?
I feel that way about my cat so much. And my mom was like, does it make you just like second guess like your feelings on being a mom? I was like, if anything, this is just like reinforcing everything. Like I'm topping out responsibility wise at the cat. Yeah. I'm just like, oh, like I can see the way my life works just around the cat, and then being like, that's not even anywhere near stratospherically like where motherhood exists in terms of
See, you're saying it in the non-self-deprecating way. I see how my life is adapted around this cat's life.
Yeah.
And that's how you have to kind of look at it.
Yeah.
And I love that you said that. Yes.
Yeah. Because like it is like any upset to the life you have is one that is, like can be a change. Like any big change, any change you make, whether it's like, oh, well, now I have this cat I have to feed, or I have these plants that need to get watered while I'm away. Like any, changes are changes, but like there's understanding change, like what that could look like, and not, I thought about myself and whether I could handle challenges and like variables. I am not somebody who's good at like pivoting and managing those things. And like, if you only want to be a mother in the best perfect, if you only think you would do it if everything was perfect, then like, I don't know if you really want to do it, because I think it's rarely perfect.
It's rarely perfect. And also you have to be lucky. You have to be lucky in the partner that you find to do it with. You have to be lucky in the health that you have after doing it. Yeah. The health your children have, the health of your partner. Like all these things are just crazy. So I forget who said it, but having a kid is like living your life with your heart outside your body.
Oh, I've heard that before.
And it's true. Yeah. It's like, holy shit. I was thinking about this yesterday when I was driving my kids. I was like, it's not enough that I care about my life and like where I go, but now I've got like 2 humans and I'm like, nothing shitty better happen to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I'll take it really personally.
I'm
saying this in the best
parents,
of terms right now.
Of course. I don't know how parents like handle it when there's even just like a bruised knee. Like I'd be like a blubbering mess on the ground to be like, what am I going to do? So like that's such a, it always like blows my mind how adaptable and in charge so many parents are when I see them managing crises. Yeah.
It's funny. My kid got a big boy bike this week. It has training wheels, but it's his first big boy bike.
Step.
Yeah. So he has fallen about 10 times. And look, my dad taught me how to ride my bike. Yeah. And now my dad was standing next to me when, my son was going up down the road, the same road that I learned how to ride a bike. And my dad's reactions to him falling were so different than my reaction. So I feel like grandparents, they're like the spoiling parent. Yes. But also they get even more hurt if your kid gets hurt. Yeah. So like Yanni, that's my name of my son, he would fall and I wasn't reacting. I was like, are you okay? Yeah. Like get up.
Yes. Because you've seen the day-to-day falls.
Yeah.
And
my dad was like, just put the volume a little lower. Yanni! And I'm like, are you... Papa, you're scaring me more than him falling and scraping his knee. And he's like, what do you want me to do? He's my grandson, Maria. And I'm like, okay.
They're precious cargo in a way that the grandparent to grandchild relationship is like such it's really intense.
It's so intense. And I was just like, okay, maybe you don't participate so much in this time around. Like, you did me. I was good.
Mm-hmm.
I got this.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's go back to being child-free. So what's interesting, though, as someone who does have kids, is that I get a lot of child-free content in my algorithm.
Me too. But makes more sense for me.
Yeah. And the content for me, I think, is kind of, I feel like the child-free content that I'm getting is the worst kind, which I don't know if you're getting it. So mine seems kind of like rage clickbait. Like,
oh, yes. Which
so
I think is a whole economy.
Do you?
Yeah, well, I think in like rage clickbait in general, like stuff like stories.
Just, I 100% agree with you. And let me just for the person listening or watching this, hello YouTube, just to kind of give a context of what I'm saying. I get a lot of child-free content of a beautiful woman walking in the Louvre, like a museum in Paris, and saying, you know, because of my child-free life, I get to travel. And I'm like, okay, like I'm traveling too. Like, what is this? And then you look at the comments. I raced the comments.
Right.
And the comments are like what I just said, which is like, I get to travel.
Right.
Like,
I have kids and I travel.
I have kids. And I'm like, okay. Like, and I'm like, I'm not going to comment this. But it's also like, I know what they're doing. And I feel like I only get that.
And that's annoying. And like, what's been so frustrating, I think there is like real evolution in the child-free community in the way that we talk about it.
Okay.
And not that I have like a community. I just have a lot of friends who also are child-free
by choice.
Community, and
though.
like we
That's
really
a
like
community.
we talk about it, but I know there's like an online community too of like a lot of like child-free.
There's child-free influencers.
Yes. And like, but I've seen also like what I always find the best is it'll be younger women. I see this kind of TikTok thing a lot, like a woman who's like 25, who's like...
Which is really young.
Yeah. And she'll be like, hey, like, I kind of think I don't want to have kids. Like, if you're 40 and never had kids and chose not to have kids, could you stitch this and tell me, like, if it's good or not? Like I think there's like a lot of...
I get
like,
a lot of that content,
and
too.
then like, I've seen like women in their 40s being like, I never had kids. I'm so happy. Here's the things about my life that I really like. And I think if that sounds good to you, then that might, you know, it's just like, there's been this like gentle kind of, I've seen people like talking about it in a way, because it's not us versus them. It's not moms and not moms. Like, it's not, it's like women.
It's kind of like, I feel like you mentioned it before, as a society and even as women, you know, you were probably given a doll.
Of course.
Right? And you were given a kitchen set.
Yep.
Right? And you're...
Playhouse.
Yeah, playhouse. And we're socialized as children to be caretakers.
Yeah.
Be it a mom or an eldest daughter. Like, we're Karen.
Yes. 100%.
Oh, we are Karen.
We are Karen.
And then it's Karen. There is something there. Okay. So I think that if a 25-year-old is asking that question, which is very young, by the way.
Yes.
Okay.
There's so much in your life that changes from 25 to 35.
Yes.
Who knows?
Right. I think it's interesting. As witnessing it, like, it's kind of like someone's putting their hand across a curtain, and it's like, there are other stories other than the ones that you were socialized.
Yes. Because like, and something I used to talk about in my old version of my show and kind of talk about a lot is like just and this happens to all women across the board. Like, we get like very rigid categories of kinds of people we get to be. I think, and there's like kind of archetypes and stereotypes to like different kinds of women that which I think we all navigate our whole lives.
What are those types?
I mean, there's like so many, but it's like, are you like a real mama, or like, are you like such a like maternal loving mom, or are you more of like, I'm a power bitch CEO? Like, there's just like
girl boss.
There's girl bosses, and it's like, I think that like if
Crunchy
you're
moms.
a child, exactly, and if you're a child-free woman, it's been like, you're a sad spinster, you're a party girl who won't grow up, or you're career driven. And it's like, oh, I don't think I'm a little bit of all of those. And I'm also a lot of other things. Like,
you're just Alison.
You're just people. And I think that like, it's been nice to see kind of people talking about being child free and being like, yeah, I mean, that's like a piece of me.
It's not a monolith.
It's exactly. And it's not like, and it's not just, people are like, oh, are you like married to your career? And I'm like, no, actually, like, I would love to not work. Like, I just want to be at home all the time by myself. But like, I think like there's been this kind of leaning on like, oh, like, I'm not having kids so I can have a career. And it's like, okay, but like lots of women who do have kids have excellent careers. So it's not like you had to do that. So it's more introspective of like, okay, I just don't think that kids work for me. And if that means there's more time for me to develop my career, that's a lovely bonus. But like, that's not, I I personally didn't choose like I must have this career that's demanding, because I know lots of women who do what I do and have children. Like it's not like you could like it's harder.
It is hard.
But I think any job is harder when you are also managing a family.
I remember her name's not coming to me right now, but the former CEO of Pepsi. She had given a talk about, she's a mom, and she had given a talk about how like, in her list of priorities, like or even Shonda Rhimes, she had said like, when you have kids and you have a big career, you're going to not make all the soccer games.
Yeah.
And you're just going to have to live with that.
Yeah.
And you can feel guilty, or you can pivot that emotion to something else. Like, well, I'm providing.
Yes. Right. And like maybe in a few years I get to take a really long break, and then I get this time that other working parents don't get. Like, there are these trade-offs. And like one thing I've loved about one child-free TikTok thing that I've seen, this one woman who I'm always trying to search for it and I can never find it.
Okay. Well, we've got CIA listen to this.
Okay, good. So you guys get on it.
And
find Kate while you're at it. But like this woman was talking about like why she, like her thoughts on being a woman who doesn't have kids. And she was like, our culture needs some people to not be parents, because you provide this really important. I remember the women who didn't have kids when I was growing up, and like they were cool, and I talked to them about different things. And like I think there's a real like parenting in America is really, really, really hard, and like you don't have a lot of resources and help and ability to like relax, and you can't. It is insane to think that two people can do all of the developmental
we don't have a
raising.
Village.
Exactly.
I feel like there's no village.
There's
like,
no village.
I compare
this country
my
hates
life,
community.
I compare my life to like my sister and my sister-in-law live in Greece, and I see their lives, and I'm like shocked at what they're going through a financial crisis. Their government, right? But it's really shocking what they're provided. Like. Of course.
Right.
Which is like, for instance, each kid gets access to an after school program that's only €50 a month.
That's amazing.
And like,
I wish this country.
Or like my nephew, he gets to do swimming classes as part of his thing. And I'm like, what?
That's so great.
And then he has,
we're making poor kids pay for lunch, but sure.
But also like, even in that society, all of the good restaurants and the good bars, they have, a play bar attached to this.
Oh, nice.
So for instance, Joyelle, our mutual friend, shout out to Joyelle because she always listens to these podcasts. Thank you. She visited us in Greece. She visited where my husband's village.
Amazing.
Right. And the bar that we would go out to drink, they have like, we're having cocktails.
Yeah.
But they also have a playpen, like a discovery zone.
Yeah, a little
do you
like
remember that?
play space, play place, whatever.
Right.
Yeah,
but it doesn't require, like in America, when you see those places, they require a parent to be in there.
Yeah,
no, they have a person. Like you're paying that person €3 per kid.
I mean,
for 2 hours.
A deal.
Yeah. Oh, it's a steal. And we get to be outside, like there's cigarettes smoking, there's cocktails, like you're good.
You're having adult time, but you're also...
Yeah, like it's integrated. And I feel like in this country, it's like, how are we surprised that more women are choosing to be child-free when you don't have a village?
Right. There's no like outside help. And I think we've seen a lot, there's been a lot of like eye-opening to like what heterosexual marriages do to women when they're not good, which is a lot of them, I think.
A lot, yeah.
I think that like, I think about like I do like being around kids. I just don't want to.
I feel like one of the reasons they're trying to ban TikTok.
Yeah, is so that women stop talking about how awful their husbands are and how little work they do.
No, I'm telling you, TikTok is definitely going to affect women procreating
100%
with people.
Yes.
If you're hearing that like some people just, you know.
My husband doesn't even know how to grocery shop. I basically raised 2 children, him and her.
That's crazy.
And it's nuts. And I think that like we're starting to see more of that. And like I love kids. I love being around them. I want to have like roles in their lives. And like I think like I have friends with kids and I love them. And it's like, I get to be like a different like. I have a lot of friends who are just having one kid.
You can be a fun aunt.
A fun aunt, right? And
that's
like,
cool.
I have friends who like there is no aunt in that family, and like I'm like my friend tells her 4-year-old, she's like, Allison is your blood relative. I'm like, well, don't tell her that because that's insane and she won't understand.
She might ask you for a kidney
she's going to be looking for stuff. But
I will say, like, can we talk about regret,
please?
Because I think regret is it's actually on both sides. Like you said before about how like some people shouldn't be parents.
Right.
I hear the regret from parents sometimes, like, I wish I didn't have kids. This is tough. That I feel like is not talked about enough because it's really, you'll see it in like an anonymous Reddit post, but you're not going to see someone on TikTok saying, I regret having my kids with the potential of their kids watching
Yeah, of course. No. And you don't want that to like get communicated to the children. But I think like also there needs to be space for people to admit when they feel like that. Right. Because otherwise it makes everyone who's feeling like that and not seeing that being like, oh, I'm a problem for like having these feelings. When I think for lots of people it pops up at times, it's an intrusive thought as much as it is a real feeling. And I think also, people talk all the time about like, well, what, everybody says to me, they're like, well, what if we wake up at 50 and you never had kids and you regret it? And I'm like, well, that's like,
but what would you regret?
That's the thing is like, I don't know, like it's not like I'm going to finally understand what it's like to have kids at 50. Cause like all my friends have kids now. Like I see what it is. Like there's not new information that'll pop up to me.
Yeah.
I don't think that my biology and hormones will like somehow kick in then. Like that doesn't seem likely, though I'm sure they'll kick into a bunch of other gears that I'm not excited about. But but like I personally have a life with other people who don't have kids. So I feel like it's very rich in that, like, I have lots of people who are available to me, like friends, that I think a lot of people don't. Like, if you have kids, you have a lot of friends who also have kids. Like, I think that sometimes they don't realize,
You've
like,
got the supplement.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you also have friends who don't have kids. Like, it's in the way that, like, parenting bonds you. Like, not parenting also bonds you.
Right.
Being a certain age and not having them or not deciding to have them and those things, like, really do create, like, these nice friendships. And I'm like, I don't know, if I have friendships and I'm making money and I have somewhere to live and the cat is still alive, like, I just don't see when, Riz, you're never going to die. But, like, I really have a hard time understanding what regrets I would feel, but I don't know, when my parents are gone and it's just me, like I could see that being tough, but that wouldn't change my opinion of what I did.
I've seen regret a few times. Mm-hmm. Do you mind if I tell you those regrets? So one regret that I see a lot at work as a matchmaker is sometimes I will meet men.
Interesting.
Who are in their 60s, who are like, I wish I had kids. Mm-hmm. Can you introduce me to someone in their 30s?
Okay.
I personally don't usually take on these clients, but there is a matchmaker for those men. So if a man is listening to this, by all means, please contact me. I'd be happy to refer you to the matchmaker that's appropriate. But, and there are women who are actually in their 30s who want a man in their 60s.
Yeah.
So great. Lid for every pot, you know?
People for whom that works, and
and there's no judgment, but at the same time I will be like, wow, you're 65, like you're my mom's age and now you want to have kids, and like best case scenario you're gonna have a kid by the time you're 67,
right?
That's a pretty advanced age to have kids, like I don't want anyone to hate on me right now, but Al Pacino just having a kid.
He's like 81 or something.
That's really old to have a kid.
Yeah. Just the physicality of a kid being around. I even, when it's not my kid and I'm like at my friend's house, like that kid's running around. We're kind of running after her. She's sitting on my lap. She's jumping. Like, and I'm like, wow, even just that physicality, like I leave there exhausted.
Right. So I see that regret. And then I've seen the regret, okay, I'm going to give you kind of like a personal experience to describe this. Between 1968 and 1974, Greece had a dictatorship, right? So we didn't have democracy. And then in 1974, democracy came back, right? And then in 1978, the first Cosmo magazines came to Greece.
Wow.
Cosmo was already a very popular magazine in Western media. It had come to Greece, and instead of it being written by Greek writers, it was actually written by the British and English writers that they had, and American writers that they had, and it was just translated into Greek.
Interesting.
Now, when we were in dictatorship, like we had curfews. There was like Greek people had curfews. They had even dress codes. There was just a very like tight society, right?
Yes.
And Greece is it was very homogeneous at the time. So, women, matchmaking was the predominant way that you met someone. Not necessarily like they were a stranger, but like your parents would broker something.
Yes.
So this is how my in-laws met, actually, because they met before 1977. So that was like a typical way that you would meet someone. My parents having met after 1980, that's a love marriage, right?
Yes.
So these are very different relationships. Okay, so Cosmo comes out in 1978. And what is Cosmo saying in 1978? You could be a career woman.
Yes.
You don't need a man. Yes. Now, who's reading Cosmo? It's not the 25-year-old. It's just like you and I. We were reading Cosmo probably when we were like 13, 12 or 13. Like it's definitely coming of age magazine.
Right. I was 17 when I was 13 and I read Cosmo when I was 17.
Right. So now you look at the women that were probably 12 to 15 years old in 1980 reading these. And now they're in their 30s in the 90s. And in Greece, you see basically a lost generation of women.
Interesting.
That opted out, not necessarily to have kids, but they were like, I don't need a man. Yes. I'm going to do a career. And that what you were saying before about like, I haven't thought about it. Yes. They're not thinking about it, right? So then what did those Greek men do? You'll see in the 90s in Greece, a lot of Greek men married women that were tourists into the country.
Interesting.
Right? Because we've got a sudden pseudo shortage of Greek women that want to marry me. So I'm going to marry this German woman. I'm going to marry this Swedish woman. I'm going to marry this English woman, right? And I have family that belongs to that generation. And then when I talk to them, and a lot of them do reach out to me, in the last 10 years, they're 45 to 60.
Right.
And they're saying stuff like, I really regret not having kids.
Interesting.
And so I feel like I'm bombarded with these messages, and I don't think it's their fault. I think that they consumed a media that was not meant for them with zero context.
Right.
Because you can't go from a place of like curfew for everyone and dress code from everyone to you don't need a man.
Right.
Get your career. Like this is
that would be very affecting.
There's no Renaissance period.
Right.
That that's there's a dark ages and then there's democracy and there's no transition.
Yeah. Wow. That's so interesting.
So I feel like I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I 100% don't think you're going to regret.
No.
Because you have a full life and whatever.
Yeah.
I also see this other place where it's like, did you choose this? Or was this forced on you?
Yes.
Not you. I'm talking about these women, right? And I think this is where like, I kind of like this sort of cultural anthropology because you can learn a lot about someone.
So interesting.
So now to kind of bring it to America now, right?
Yes.
In the US, I do see that, we are seeing in the studies that more women are opting and couples are opting to not have kids.
Yes.
And my question now, and maybe you can help me answer this, is are they choosing not to have kids? Or is society, with its lack of resources, forcing couples and women to maybe not want to have kids?
I mean, I do think that the lack of resource in America and the way that our society is structured is a big part of that. That is the government being like, you're on your own, good luck. And yeah, especially when you look at even in the 50s and 60s, there was just more help. There was more of a, or not even really a lot, but like at least a little bit. There was more buying power to having a job. Like, I think about financially with me. I do well in what I do. There's up and down years, but like I do well. As a single person, like I can't buy a 1-bedroom apartment in New York. Like I don't get like, and sure, if I had a partner and we were both making this kind of money, like maybe we could buy something that we could live in and I'm doing well. Like I know lots of people are not doing as well as I am. And I'm just like, wow. Yeah, I think that decision is getting a little bit made for people because you look at the realities and it's like, what are we going to go underwater just to have one kid? I mean, then what do we do? And people are losing jobs much quicker. And like, I think that like the economy and the lack of resources, I do think is a big part of it for people. It's not my reason, but it certainly is like when I think about it, I'm like, well, that is part of it. Like that is a reality that.
But it seems like you had made that decision before you knew that reality. And I think that's where we have to differentiate. Like, and I think this is where like, I'm kind of, the point that I'm trying to round up here on a ribbon sort of is like, you made that choice.
Yes.
Without knowing the societal factors.
Yes.
But then there are other people that are making this choice based on that.
Yes.
There could be regret in that second group.
Yeah, 100%. I think that on both sides, people regret the choices they make around children.
Oh, yeah.
And
dude, there's a lot of parents who regret. So don't misunderstand.
Yes. Yeah. No, not. And I think that
to segue that, there are people that didn't have access to healthcare and that choice was made for them.
Yes.
And they might regret, having kids.
Right. And it was not up to them in that way. And it's, I think those regrets, I think like you have to think about having kids is just like, do you want to do it or not? And then go from there with the decision making.
Right.
And I think that unfortunately there's probably a pretty big swath of people right now where the economics of having a family are the forefront reason for why they wouldn't. And that's unfortunate because if you took out that variable, what would they choose?
Right. You've been really public about getting an abortion.
Mm-hmm.
So public that you sold out a theater.
Like famously public.
Famously public. Can we talk about it?
Of course.
Talk about it.
I can always talk about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been cool in the last few years, like as access to abortion has gotten worse.
Let's put a parenthesis here. Your show, Oh God, a show about abortion, it came out like a week before Roe versus Wade was reversed.
We opened April 26th, 2022. Opening night was May 9th, I think. And I think a few days before I was like maybe a week and a half into the show was when the leak happened where it was kind of like, they're going to do it. And then there was this bizarre time that like everybody was feeling in America where it's like we knew they were going to overturn Roe, but they hadn't issued the decision yet. And it was just this like gray area of knowing it was coming. And then it was like at mid-June that they finally
What day was your first show?
April 26th.
I think I came to the April 27th show, the second day. And I don't think the leak had happened.
No, because it was like I think it was 1 week later because I remember I was like out at dinner after the show.
And I remember the most brilliant show ever.
Thank you.
I love that I went on a double date with Joyelle.
So fun.
And our men.
So
because our men got to witness this.
Yes.
And, there was a point in your show where, just everybody's crying. And I looked over to my husband and my husband's just like, and I just love that he had to, he got to experience that. Like, this isn't just a show about women. It's a show about Americans.
Yeah.
Right. And like our
being
choices.
Alive.
Yeah. Right. Being alive. Right. And humanity, like having empathy and trust that the other person is making the right decision for themselves.
Yes.
And having seen that show, knowing that there is going to be a court case about Roe versus Wade. So before the leak.
Yes. But we all knew they were hearing Dobbs.
Right.
Yeah.
And then when we get the leak, I was like, and I remember just Googling you, like, how is Alison doing? And I think you added more shows.
We extended twice. I was doing constant press and people just being like, what's it like? And I'm like, I did. And like,
somehow you became the expert.
Every like man in comedy that I knew was like, wow, you had really great timing. And I was like, I would trade all of it away to have abortion access be widely accepted. Like, I eventually got to the point of being like, okay, this is an awful thing, but if it spotlights the show and the show can like help direct people towards understanding things more, I guess that's a little silver lining. But I was like, I don't want to be famous for this. This isn't like for this at this time. Like I want people to know me and be like, that show was so cool talking about abortion.
Fuck you to any guy comedian who was men don't good timing.
Yeah,
those are the same guys who are like, women aren't funny.
It wasn't any of my friends that said anything like that. It was other guys.
Okay, so when you got your abortion, I'm going to skip over, whose baby and all that stuff is, but
irrelevant. It's not even in the show.
when you went to get the abortion, how was you were in the state of New York?
I was in New York. I was just over in Soho. I went to the Planned Parenthood there. I called my doctor and they were like, oh, we don't do those. And I'm like, but we're in New York. Like, I just thought like, oh, but it's the same. It's all this area. Like, wouldn't you, and like, no judgment from them, but they were like, oh, we just don't do them. There's like other stuff you need to do to like provide them. So then I had to go to Planned Parenthood. I would have rather gone to my doctor. Like even my like easy breezy abortion story that I tell where I'm like, this is how easy it could be for people.
How easy is it?
For me, it was extremely easy. It was an afternoon, went in.
How many days between you calling them to the appointment?
You can't, I chose the procedure just because I have had friends who have done the medical where you just take pills and it ends it. There's like certain timelines you can do. Mm-hmm. Oops, I'm sorry. each of those on that I'm not 100% clear on, but I think you have to be 6 weeks for them to do the procedure. And I was like, well, great, because I was on the road and I knew I was coming back to New York. And I was like, oh, it's 5 weeks now. I'll be back in 5 days. So I'll be at 6 weeks and I can do that. Because I had taken Plan B once when I was much younger, and it really like my stomach was a disaster. And it was just, I was like, ugh, I don't know if I really enjoyed this. I mean, I enjoyed the outcome as I was not pregnant, but I was like, I'll do the procedure. I've had a million back surgeries. I was like, how bad can this be? Right. It's literally like 15 minutes.
So they had time for you?
They had time. It was like pretty, at the time, now this was in 2019. I think that the clinics in New York are much harder to get into now because people are traveling from out of state to come here because it is legal, which is a very scary thing that even if, which is why it's important for it to be accessible everywhere. Cause like it affects people who live in New York if it's illegal in West Virginia, because New York becomes a place that they'll go. And then there's more people and it's hard. Like there are certain timelines that people are on in order to get this healthcare. And so if it's so busy that you can't get in, that's, you know, then it doesn't matter how legal it is in New York. It still is these laws are still affecting people. But for me, I got in exactly when I wanted to and went in on a Saturday afternoon. And
did you see any protesters?
There were like 2 old people across the street. Like there wasn't what I think is out there these days.
So you think it's worse now?
I have seen reports that like at certain times, like it is like there are cops there. There is all kinds of stuff going on. So I don't know. I haven't like spent any time around that clinic.
But the Planned Parenthood provides
all kinds
affordable
of
health care to women.
Yeah, they give like basically physicals and cancer screenings. And
the idea of someone being harassed going to a healthcare appointment is just really baffling to me.
I know.
Do these people not have jobs?
Right. Well, I think they do it a lot on Saturday because like Planned Parenthood, when I went, only did the procedure abortions Tuesdays and Saturdays. So you had to make an appointment on one of those days. So I think that like protesters know, so they come on Saturday.
When you went in the 15 minutes, what'd you do after?
I went home.
You didn't get an ice cream? Or?
No, my friend picked up a bunch. My friend had dropped me off because you have to be there for a few hours. It's like an annoying, like you have to wait. And I don't know if that's like a law or if that's just like how that clinic functions. So I was there. I was like, I'm going to be like 2 or 3 hours, even though it's like a 15. Well, because some of it is like you take drugs. So like you have to dismount from the drugs before you're coming out of like light anesthesia. Okay. So my friend was like, I'm going to go play tennis. I'll come back and pick you up and I'll bring a bunch of treats. And she came back and we grabbed an Uber back to Brooklyn and I watched TV and we opened some wine. And it was just like, I don't know, it kind of felt like a middle of my period day, like in terms of how I was feeling.
Got it.
It was like going to the dentist mixed with like day 3.
Yeah.
So like certainly for me personally, no health issues that made it any worse than the bare minimum that it can be. So
and do you regret getting an abortion?
Not at all. I think about it all the time. I do the math of like, how old would that kid be? Like, wonder where his father is. Like, no, it's just so strange to be like, oh, in a sliding doors moment, that my life would look entirely different. That isn't to say it would be bad. I think in this scenario, probably wouldn't have been like ideal. But I don't think it's like but it wouldn't have been the life I have.
Listen,
and it wouldn't have been what I've chosen.
Kids should be born to parents that really want them.
Yeah.
You know, and studies have shown that people are happier when they have kids that they want. Right?
Of course, yes.
And also the kid is happier.
Right. That's a better scenario for that whole family.
Yeah,
and, I think a lot about, what abortion is and why it's important and how it connects to kind of other things. And like, you don't just deserve to survive. Like, you deserve to thrive. And like, we all deserve in all the different ways that this country doesn't let people.
You deserve to be wanted.
Right. And you deserve, like, if like, I shouldn't just be like, oh, at least I'm alive and my life is fine. Like, I should be able to be like, oh, I have the life I really wanted. And like, everybody should have that. And there's a lot of ways that this country doesn't let a lot of people have that. But like, that is like, I think about like trans rights. And I'm like, yeah, those people who are trans should have the opportunity to have a life they want, not just to stay alive. And like, I think, these things are also connected where it's like, we got to give people more.
For me, it's also like the right to privacy.
Yeah.
Like, it's funny because I remember a year ago, someone from my community was like, can I sit next to you or do you not sit next to Republicans? And I'm like, I didn't even know you were a Republican, but of course
now you've
you can,
told me.
Thank you, but you can also sit next to me.
Yeah.
And just started talking about like trans children and how they shouldn't have access to anything. And I was like, why are you talking to me about this?
What? It's not
like,
your kid. It's not your business.
No, but like I'm just watching something.
Yeah.
You've sat next to me. Now, where did this topic come from?
So bizarre.
So I asked him, I was like, where is this coming from? He's like, well, you're a Democrat. And I go, is this what you think Democrats talk about all day?
Right.
And he's like,
that's
well,
so strange.
And I go, no, I think what Democrats, if that's what you're getting from that conversation, I'm sorry that we've done a really bad job. I don't speak for all Democrats, but we've done a terrible job at like telling you what the priorities are. What I support, if we're going to talk about this, is the right to privacy of my family.
Yeah.
Like, I think I should be able to make decisions about my children and about my body. Those are two separate things, by the way. I'm not putting them together.
No, of course.
Like in the way I see fit, and I'm allowed to have that privacy.
Yeah.
Like,
what me and my doctors talk about is what me and my doctors talk about, and doesn't really need anybody else to weigh in.
How I see the Constitution, Amendment 14 tells me, that I have a right to this privacy. And it's like, you're like, what you're talking about right now, that's not, I don't think about trans children all day.
Right. No.
Like I wasn't thinking about them when you sat down next to me. Just like I wasn't thinking about abortion when you sat next to me.
Right, exactly.
But now you're talking about it, so now I have to discuss it and I'm not even prepared.
Right.
So like what kind of emotion? And I said to him, like, where do you want this conversation to go?
What was the point?
And I love that I was really calm and collected, and maybe it's because we were in a crowd, but I was like, what were you hoping from this conversation?
Right. Yeah.
Because like I'm not here, I don't think I can change your mind about something. And he's like, well, in case you ever want to just go out to lunch and debate this. And I go, I don't want to debate this with you.
Debate like anything.
None of this. Like I'm good.
I know how I feel. I'm
good.
Like
there's nothing to debate. There's no winners here.
Yeah. Like I'm not going to change your mind. You're certainly not going to change mine.
I remember saying to him, like, I think you and I have way more things in common than what you're talking about right now.
Yeah.
And I bet you and I could be really great friends if you just didn't put me in this like bucket.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I'm not doing that. I'm like, you literally started this conversation by saying, is it okay if I sit next to you because I'm Republican?
Right.
Like, I didn't even know you were, I've known you for 10 years. I had no idea.
Right. You're using that to like identify us, not me. I was just sitting here.
Yeah. I was just sitting here watching some kids play. Like, I'm like, cool, and I would like to also ask you about, when you had your show about abortion, oh God, how did you handle, I'm sure it was very supportive. I could tell it was very supportive, but also I'm sure you got a lot of hate.
I surprisingly didn't.
Oh.
And I'm still like a little confused onto like what happened there.
So do you think the hate's manufactured by like the loudest minority?
I don't know. The only time I clocked any, and I did a lot of press, and like here and there would be like an Instagram post about an interview I did, and like there'd be like one random comment that's like, abortion isn't funny. But
it's
like
kind of fun. Everything
and it's like everything can be funny if you talk about it vulnerably and from first person. Like I can talk about
that's
it.
That's why Pete Davidson can talk about 9/11.
Right.
Like,
yes. And it's like, wow, it's refreshing to hear somebody.
I'm not going to make a 9/11 joke.
No, but he should make as many as he wants.
By all means, if that's what helps you process.
Exactly. But like, I really was like just waiting for my inbox to be full of like strangers being like, you're a baby killer, or like whatever they say about women having abortions or people having abortions. But like, I never got that. Like there was never like an influx of hate. There was never, the only thing I really got was when I wrote an op-ed for the New York Times just about doing the show.
In the comments?
During the fall of Roe.
I remember reading this. This was such a good article.
Thank you. And it was just about how kind of like, it was hard to thread the needle of like how I'm feeling every day. And also it was really exhausting, but also it felt really important. And also it's comedy, but it's also my life. Like there are all these kind of factors. And I didn't even see hate from it until Laura Ingraham tweeted out the link. And she was like, this is what the Democrats are. And I was like, I mean.
The bucket. There it is.
And then it was like, but I wasn't even tagged. So it wasn't like, I didn't get a lot of stuff like directed at me. I'm sure there were a lot of comments. There were a couple of like articles from like little conservative newspapers about the show.
Yeah.
But they weren't like part of the way that like if I'm a woman who's on Twitter and I'm like, I like waffles more than pancakes, and men are like, oh, I'm sorry, so you don't like, and it's like, oh no. Yeah. So like it wasn't any of that, but
I'll tell you something.
It's very strange.
As someone who has had kids, So I've never had an abortion. I have taken Plan B.
It's a rough day.
It was a rough day.
It was like more, like I was like, oh great, I'll take this pill and like then I'll be safe because I wasn't taking birth control.
And
I was
also
like,
based on the guy's reaction when I took Plan B, like I was nauseous all day and I was like throwing up, and he wasn't as helpful as I thought he could be. And I'm like, you know what, this is a good decision. Anyway, so but you know, nonetheless, I've always been pro-choice.
Yeah,
and I remember when I was pregnant with my son, and that was a really tough pregnancy because whatever, just a lot of
there's
weird
so
things
much that
happening.
can be tough about it. It seems.
But I remember when I was like, there is like a sort, I felt, and not every pregnant woman or person needs to have this experience like I did, but I remember thinking like I was bonding when he was kicking.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like I could feel, I was like, oh, I know that kick. Are you getting comfortable? You know, whatever.
It would be weird not to, but I'm sure there are people who don't feel that way, and that's
right,
also
and that's fine. But I remember thinking like, as pro-choice as I was before I got pregnant, feeling my baby kick, I became so crazy pro-choice. Like I thought I was at a level 100 pro-choice.
Yeah, right.
But being pregnant, it was just like new level unlocked. Pow, pow. And that was because I remember thinking like, I must have been like 32 weeks pregnant where there was still room for him to like move.
Yeah, right.
And he was kicking, he was doing this thing. He had hiccups every day at 2 p.m. It was annoying as hell. Like the first day was funny, but then after that, it was like enough. You know what's funny? He was born and every day at 2 p.m. he still had the hiccups for like a month.
That's so wild.
It's crazy. That's like his favorite baby story, by the way.
That's
anyway,
really sweet.
So he was like kicking, he's all that stuff. And I remember thinking, if something crazy happened where I needed an abortion at 34 weeks, I'm telling you, I am not choosing this abortion. This has to happen.
Right.
Something crazy has happened. Yes. Something so devastating has happened.
Yes.
Right?
That you would want that healthcare.
That I need this healthcare.
Right.
And the idea of someone else telling me you murdered your baby, or someone telling me you can't do something.
I'm a senator.
Like,
you can't. Like what?
Crazy. It was so crazy for me to like. And I remember saying this to my husband at 32 weeks. I go, any man, any person telling a woman you cannot get access to all of your health care is not a good person.
No.
Because it's none of your business.
It's not.
It's between the woman, her partner, and the doctor. And if you want to include their spiritual leader, fuck it. Why not?
That's
you know what I mean?
Then that's their choice.
That's their choice. That pro-choice goes across a few layers, okay?
Yes, absolutely.
But like, and then since then, I've had friends who've had to make those hard choices. Thankfully, it's only been 2 friends, okay?
It's so devastating.
It's so devastating.
It's so awful that everything around it should be as easy as possible on the person who is going through that.
And especially in my case, these 2 friends, they had kids already. So you're talking about a lot of, you're juggling.
Right, you're going to risk your life and like leave your other, like, I mean, that stuff
you know, you have 2 children and this has happened to you where you could die.
Right.
These children could grow up without a mom.
No.
And I remember just like one of them, you know, she had a late term abortion, and in the state of New Jersey, you have to give a funeral. But the thing is, like, her life was at risk.
Right.
And it was that bad. Like, this child would have been born with extreme difficulties and obstacles in life. I don't know if they would have, I don't know the medical history to say more. Okay. But maybe worse. You know what I'm saying? Things had to happen. This woman had a baby room. She had a baby shower.
Right.
A sprinkle because it was her 3rd kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it wasn't like, oh, I regret getting pregnant. Give me an abortion at a McDonald's. Like, it wasn't like that.
Yeah.
And I think I've had to explain this to men at work because do you know this? As a matchmaker, the deal breakers have shifted so much since I started my company.
Oh.
The first deal breaker when I started my company used to be smoking.
Yeah.
Then I started my company in 2008, 2009. In 2015, Trump announces his pregnancy. Suddenly, the deal breaker is Trump. And I have clients who are Republican who are like, they have to be a Trump supporter. And I had clients who were not Republican who were like, not even not Republican. They were just not Trump supporters.
Right.
because they were still conservative, and they would say no Trump supporters.
Yes.
So that became the biggest deal breaker. Then it shifts again with the vaccine rollout, starting in March of
I bet.
2021.
Wow, what a wild
it was like the
thing to have
newest
to
deal
fold
breaker
into
was
your
like
business.
vaccines or no. I've met people who are like, they can't be vaccinated, which is like, oh, okay, you're in New York,
Right.
shut up.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
most people
right.
here are vaccinated.
Right.
How
Well,
the
then
fuck
you
am I
can't go
gonna-
on dates in restaurants.
Congrats. Yeah. And then the next deal breaker happened in 2022 in June, which is like,
Wow.
and this was across the voting spectrum.
Interesting.
I would meet Republicans and I would meet Democrats, and they would say they have to be cool with abortion.
Yeah.
And what I found interesting is sometimes I would meet men and they would say, well, I think there should be limits of 12 weeks. And every time it was that conversation, I
What
would
are
say,
you legislating? What are
right.
you-
And I'd
shut
say,
up.
why? Can you tell me why 12 weeks?
Yeah.
And it would be like the most bullshit answer, at least in my view.
Yeah.
But then I would say to them, could you imagine if a woman do you have anyone that's like ever had a late term abortion? And they always have one friend.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah. And I go, what happened in that scenario? Oh, well, the child would have been born with like a missing
Right.
part of its brain or
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah. No lungs or
And
like
like,
something
yeah,
where
and
you're
I'm
like, yeah,
like-
that's not.
Okay. Shouldn't they have access to that care? And they're like, yeah, but that's different.
No, that's it.
That's it. That's the
That's
point.
that's what it is.
That's what it is. That's what we're talking about here, right? So you can be, there's a place where, to me, when I hear pro-choice, it's pro-privacy.
Yes. Yeah.
That's
Everybody
it.
should get to make the choices they want. If you want to
Yeah.
have a million kids, I want you to have a million kids.
Yeah, you
but I
wanna
also
have-
want you to stay out of my business when I say I don't want any, and I'll do the things I need to do to continue with that.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And I can't stand it and I think for me, the hardest part this past year, and I'm going to blame TikTok on this one, is you might know them, Roe versus Bros or something.
Oh yeah.
They go around.
Yeah.
Is that what it's
Roe-
called?
It's a play on Roe and
Yeah.
Bros. I know that.
So they go around, they interview guys, asking them about like, how many tampons do you think
Yeah.
a woman
Basic
uses?
like women's
right anatomy.
biology. Yeah.
What is a fallopian tube?
Yeah. Point to the vagina. On
Point to
this
the vagina.
diagram.
Yeah, right. And, like I've seen men, like when she asks them, how many tampons do you think a woman goes through in a week when she has her period? And they'll say 1 a day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, no, that's not how tampons work.
No.
You could be at risk of dying from
Yeah.
toxic shock
Don't do that.
syndrome. Don't do that, but also you'll be leaking.
Yes.
They're not built like that.
They just are not. They just started testing them on blood this year.
That is crazy, by the way. That's going to end up in my book.
It's so crazy.
Yeah. And then the second thing that I also noticed was that there are men that are legislating. Like I see them in Congress
Yes.
debating, and they're saying stuff like an ectopic pregnancy can survive. And I'm like,
Right.
no,
it objectively
it cannot.
can't.
It literally cannot. Like this is not my opinion.
Right.
It's not in the uterus.
Right. The medical community has said like
You could die
full-throated,
from that.
like it will kill the mother and it will never survive. Like that's not.
I think Grey's Anatomy has done a really great job of trying to educate people what ectopic pregnancy is with Christina, and then also using Christina as a vehicle about what it means to decide I'm going to put my career first unapologetically.
Yeah.
Right? Do you watch Grey's Anatomy?
I don't, but I'm familiar with that's Sandra
It's
Oh,
a
right?
whole a whole storyline over
Yes,
multiple
I remember.
seasons.
I definitely like people have like talked to me about it, and I've been like, I like that.
But it wasn't from a stance of like, oh, look at what this dirty
Right.
woman is. No, she's a revered character making a choice.
Yes.
And completely unapologetic for it, as she should be.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like that is what's missing in the like discourse, is that like, I feel like my dad, I've been telling him what's been happening recently in Alabama. And also like in the, is it Iowa or Idaho, which state is like criminalizing a mother for taking a child across state lines?
I think it's
for an
Idaho
abortion?
because Washington is
Okay,
next over. Yeah.
So I told my dad this, and my dad, 71-year-old man from a country where every gynecologist has to perform an abortion because that's part of healthcare. He's like, where are the protests? I'll go protest. And I go, Dad, it's not just you protesting. It's like, you have to also educate your friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I tell lately I've been kind of like lashing out at my husband. I go, George, like, I feel like none of you, why is it up to me to make a Facebook status? Why aren't you?
Right.
Like, you have a daughter now.
Right.
And by the way, I also reject the fact that he need a daughter.
Right.
To like
to
understand this.
Right.
Like, and I'm just like, Dad, George, you guys have to do stuff. I'm
Yeah.
done.
Right.
Allison is done.
We've been
Joyelle is done. We've
beating
done
the
it.
drum out there doing all this stuff, and I will continue doing all the things I need to do. But at some point, it's
like, by the way, it's not lost on me that we are recording today on a day where in a country in Africa, they just
Gambia.
In Gambia, in Gambia, they just made it legal again for female genital mutilation.
Yeah, I saw that when I was coming here, and I was like, this is
like these sort of all so this sad. It's all connected. This discourse, which is basically to tell you that women are second-class citizens from birth until we die. Yeah, and the only people on this planet that are going to help us get equal is not us. Yeah, it's them.
Right, it's
helping
men.
us.
Need to like stand up and do, and like so much of like why I wanted to do my show in general was to be like, this is how not a big deal this little thing is. Like, this and like, and I
think had wine after.
Yeah, and it's like, and I think that like it was intended to be like educational to like other women, but also like to like any men who might come across and be like, this is what we're fighting for. It's like, this is the easy version. This should be like, if you don't get this, like you don't get being alive. Like this is like
it's a clump of cells.
It was easy. It wasn't traumatic for me. I'm okay. Like you don't have to like worry about me. I'm okay. Right. And like, we should just let people do this if they need to do it.
I just wish people knew how many married women with kids also get abortions. Like that should be on billboards.
I think it's like more than half or like half of all abortions performed are on women who already have children.
I feel like you said this sometime in a press, and I remember that was the same period. I was like, George, you're getting a vasectomy. And George did. Yeah. He got a vasectomy.
I mean,
I will tell you.
That seems easy.
You know, and you know what? They should put on the billboard of vasectomies. Your dick gets bigger.
Oh, that's a fun little silver lining. Yeah. They should tell everybody that.
They should tell everyone that. I don't understand it. Not that we had problems before, but now I'm like, oh, this is different.
That's a bonus.
That is a bonus. That should be on the pamphlet.
That should be on the pamphlet. That's like, something I didn't know.
Yeah. Because I think it's because you get used to condoms for so long. Yeah. And like that is restricting. Oh, absolutely. And now you're like, oh, I can fuck whenever. Yeah. And now don't have to worry. Don't have to be scared. Realizes its full potential.
Oh, yeah. It's not as scared anymore.
Oh, it's definitely different. Our sex life is way different. It's way better.
Yeah. I feel like all the friends I have who are married or with somebody and their partners got vasectomies are all like, oh, yeah, it's great.
Yeah, yeah. He went with a friend. It was called a brosectomy. Best thing we've ever done.
Yeah, they should all go do that.
Brosectomies for everyone.
Yes.
That's how you prevent abortions.
There you go. More brosectomies.
Well, Alison, that is a great place to end this show. More vasectomies.
Yes, more vasectomies.
Yeah. Alison, where can people find you?
You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter still for some reason at Alison. I'm still on Twitter. I don't know. I'll go down with that ship. I was like, I topped out at learning new stuff. I was like, I get Twitter. I've been on Twitter for a long time. I'm in. I'm still doing it. At Alison Leiby, ALISONLEIBY. And I have a podcast called Ruined, where my very good friend who loves horror movies tells me the plot of different horror, because I like won't see a scary movie.
Oh, me too.
And I'm always like, well, what happens? Like, you can tell me the ending. Like, I'm never going to see it. So that's pretty much the podcast.
I think I'm going to become obsessed with this podcast.
Yes, it's so great because there's like movies where I'm like, oh, I've known the references to this movie in culture forever, but I didn't really know what it was. And now I know the ending and all the characters. I don't watch scary movies. I don't either. I don't like scary. I don't like doing scary. And so it's called Ruined, and you can follow it.
I'm going to check it out. I will put all those links in the show notes.
Great.
I'm going to root for you forever because Alison, I think you're so brilliant. And I will tell you that Alison is my influencer. She ice baths her face in the morning. Yes. And now I ice bath my face in the morning.
It feels amazing.
And we both have, I know people are going to ask me this, so I'm just going to ask you now.
Sure.
Where are your glasses from?
These are Warby Parker.
Oh, mine, same.
Yeah. I'm just like, I don't know, glasses.
But yours are gold and mine are rose gold, I think.
Oh, are yours rose gold? Oh, yes. It's hard to tell because of the pink light. Oh, yes. Yes. I love them. And I bought a jewelry jacuzzi. I got influenced on Instagram. And
you put your glasses in there?
Yes.
I did not know to do that. Hold up. Yeah. One more time.
The reason I bought it is I saw a TikTok of a girl's like, my routine when I get home every day. And she put her glasses in one of these little like microsonic baths that they advertise as being jewelry.
My rings in
I love putting my diamonds in it. It's so nice. And it was like, oh, it works, especially if you have metal frames, it's good. If you have an acetate plastic, it's not quite as good. I will put them in there. And like, also like these things are so gross. You will see the stuff come off of them. You can put your glasses in it totally. It's just water. And then I wipe off the lenses with a lens cleaner, and it's like getting another prescription. It's like a new prescription. I can see so much better.
Wow. Alison continues to influence me.
Wow.
Like, you've just changed my life.
I'm here to help. I'm
You're
obsessed.
here to help. I love you. I love you so much. Alison, thank you again for coming to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. This was so much fun. What a delight.
And thank you for listening / watching this week's episode. Follow Alison. I'm going to have all those links in the show notes. And of course, if you're on YouTube, comment. Tell us what your favorite part was. If you are listening to this on Apple or Spotify, share that link with a friend and go to the show notes. Follow Alison. Follow me if you don't follow me already, which would be really weird. And, as we always end each week, be lovable, but more importantly, be likable. See you next week.